On this channel, we provide useful programming information with practical code examples. This time, it's about wrapper objects in JavaScript. It explains how to create wrapper objects from each primitive type. Enabling subtitles will make the code descriptions easier to understand. Please make use of it. JavaScript has primitive types and objects to handle them, wrapper objects. Primitive types represent a single value and are simple and lightweight. These are immutable, unchangeable, and do not directly have object methods or properties, but they can be temporarily converted into wrapper objects for operations. String and number are examples of primitive types. On the other hand, wrapper objects start with a capital letter, like string and number. To manipulate primitive types, JavaScript temporarily generates wrapper objects, wrappers. Wrapper objects contain methods and properties for the primitive types. Number is an object type that wraps a primitive number. By explicitly creating a number object, you can handle numbers like a number, but it is usually recommended to use the primitive number type. Type of num object is object, but type of 42 is number. Be aware that using the new operator to generate a new wrapper object yields a different result from calling number as a function. When called as a function, a primitive number is returned. It is an object type that wraps a primitive string. By using a string object, you can access string properties and methods, but usually a primitive string is used. Type of strobject is object, but type of hello is string. Like number, calling string as a function returns a primitive string. It is an object type that wraps a primitive Boolean. You can also explicitly create a Boolean object, but usually a primitive Boolean type is used. Type of bool object is object, but type of true is Boolean. Similar to number, calling Boolean as a function returns a primitive Boolean. You can use object to create a wrapper object for symbol, but generally, you use the symbol primitive type directly. Primitive types are lightweight and memory efficient, but they do not have direct properties or methods. However, in JavaScript, even with primitive types, temporary wrapper objects are automatically created when needed to provide methods and properties. Wrapper objects are explicitly generated objects that can impact memory and performance, so using primitive types is generally recommended. The source code for this video can be downloaded from the official website. If you like, please visit the URL in the description to aid your learning. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to enjoy more content, please subscribe to the channel.